nights. I'm on
Welcome to the 3 Point Podcast with Nate and Moorhead.
Alrighty, well, here we go, man. It's interesting. I'm so glad we are choosing to do these after a little editing stint because it just took us 30 minutes to get mics and we have no equipment whatsoever. It's like the two of us, our computers, and our AirPods, and it took us a legit 30 minutes for us to get up and running. So shout out to all you people out there that's got $4,000 worth of equipment, and you guys sound awesome.
Someday.
That's right. Someday we're looking for some sponsorships right now. You're there in Battle Creek, so maybe Kellogg's wouldn't mind.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Anybody.
sure. Anybody.
We'll take anybody at this point. So anyways, but yeah, so I thought this was going to be a good topic, especially on the heels of what we discussed in our last series in our 3 Point podcast. And so we talked about how to handle the COVID-19 crisis. Little did we know 3 weeks ago when we shot that, all that has happened in the last few weeks, and it's just been bizarre. And so it was kind of interesting at the time. We didn't know what we were getting ourselves into, but we just kind of started pitching a few ideas here and there. And actually, it definitely wasn't intentional, but now here we are a few weeks later, and we've seen so many creative things discovered through all of this. And I think I cited at the last episode we shot, the last part of that, I talked about where I work, how we're seeing so many churches that are just becoming super creative. Like there's no script for this. We're just winging it. And so one of the things we've talked about over the years, which again, I think this topic of creativity, it is synonymous with you, and you are known to be creative, and you've had way too many conversations at 5:30 on a Wednesday night. Hey, Brother Moorhead, I'm going into a service. I need an idea. And so you're just kind of known for that. We tease you, about your tarps and your pool noodles and all that stuff. But the fact of the matter is, and I can honestly say this, you're one of the few people I know that I could bring you into our church on a weekend and you could connect with any audience. And you've done that. We've had you in an anniversary service. We had you at a children's revival. We've had you in a leadership setting with a smaller group of leaders. I mean, it's not even a question.
Did a youth rally.
Did a youth rally. Yeah, so literally you've covered every kind of aspect or ministry except for singing. And we're just going to, you sit this one out.
And I have offered.
You have, but this is where you're more than willing to make a joyful noise unto the Lord. So with that said, we'll let you serve where your gifts are most effective. And so I want us to talk a little bit about creativity. And the first point we're going to make is this. Creativity comes through crisis. I cannot tell you how many times I have thought about this over the years, and even now more than ever. So talk to us a little bit about creativity in the midst of crisis.
Well, my working definition for creativity is problem solving. Generally, you don't wake up and say, okay, I'm going to go do this or whatever. It's you have an issue and you're trying to figure out how to no longer have the issue, and then you become creative. And so a lot of times it is when your back is against the wall, when you have the greatest ideas. And so I have a 3-pronged response to that. And when you go through crisis, you have 3 steps: reflect, remove, and redesign. We're going to start with reflect. First thing is to step back and say, okay, what's going on? And obviously we have a big one that's already here, and that is, how do we still communicate with people? How do we still have some type of normalcy in the middle of all of this craziness? And it's just about thinking and talking. And so with our church, we started brainstorming. What are some things we can do? What are some things that is needed? And we realized that instead of really big connection points, we would do small connection points. So
Right.
it's once a night for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go a little old school with you, Nate. And I've just finished Doug Field's book, Refuel. I have not read a Doug Field's book in a while. And he talks about how to connect with God as 3 steps. Number 1, stop. Number 2, be quiet. And number 3, make a connection. And so obviously life has stopped us and things have been quiet. And we've just been trying to make connections. They don't have to be grand gestures, just small connections with people. And so as you begin to reflect on what is the need, you start seeing what are my resources to meet that need.
Right.
And then you start to do what you can. And then remove. A lot of times we just have a lot of extras that are in the way. So what we've tried to do in this season is just become as simplistic as possible. How do you just get rid of all of the noise and just answer the needs that are in front of you? And then come up with a new plan. What is your new way that you're going to do? And I think that's where we can kind of spend a little time, because we have both witnessed some things. I was telling you, our youth pastor, Lindsay and Gary Smith, they wanted a service project for their students. And so what they did is they had a DoorDash delivery to a local hospital. And we have some first responders that work at a local hospital. And one of them is a local responder who used to come to our church, doesn't currently come to our church, but has recently come around a few times. And so she wanted to reach out to her and to her friends. And it was incredible. And the response was incredible. It was Qdoba's, and they had a whole table full of things. And it was just the neatest thing to watch them reach out in a new way. Hey, we've done outreach for a long time. We've never sent DoorDash to anybody. And so to me, that was just the neatest way of making a connection. And I think for me, that's the big picture right now is just how do we make connections? On our Good Friday service, we had a family in the church. They passed out bags to everybody, all of the members of the church, and we did communion on Friday night. Live stream communion. Never thought we would do that. That's always really intimate and all of that kind of thing. And it was really, I was a little skeptical, nervous, didn't know how it would go, but we got our bag and we had our 3 little communions in there. And being in our home, sitting together in the living room, doing communion and praying. And it really was a powerful thing. And we would have never thought to do that unless a crisis had brought us to this point. The next thing we're working on right now, and I've just about got all of the signage done, going to be using Sign 11 tomorrow, is we're going to do a drive-through prayer, not this coming week, but next week. It's supposed to rain all week next week. So we've got a tent, and we're going to have, we got 3 signs on each side and a big sign under the tent. And it just says drive-through prayer line. And we're going to be praying for healing, financial needs, and salvation. And of course, whatever else that they're wanting to pray. But those are the 3 things on the sign. And it's going to be open for 2 hours. We're going to have a tent. We're going to have gloves and masks on. And as people come through, we've already ordered our prayer cloths. We're going to pray for the prayer cloths, give it to them, and just make a connection. Would have never come up on this on our own, but in the middle of this, just trying to make some connections.
Man, that's incredible. I actually had thought about that. I'm surprised we haven't had that hit the news. Local pastor arrested for drunk driving. And the story behind it is he was like, yeah, well, we serve, wine for communion. I just went to 100 church members. I went to all their houses and had communion with them. So sorry if I'm a little tipsy right now, officer. Honestly, it was just a mistake.
There you go.
Anyways, that's a whole nother discussion right there. So wine or juice. But anyways, we're not even going to go there. But no, I think those are profound points, and those are great, real life examples. We have a huge crisis, but we're finding outlets of creativity. And I think what I'm understanding here is it's caused us to shift the way that we think about things. And so many of the causes for creativity that we've had over the last couple of weeks, they're going to become a part of who we are now. And churches that were never doing live streaming or never putting themselves out there, they've had to now. And so now this is just going to be a part of them. This is going to be another programming element in their church. So that's really cool. And thanks for some, real life examples that we can share with everybody.
Let me throw one thing before we move on to point number 2, if you don't mind. Another great resource that I'd like to just throw out there is Dan Ryland. And he has a blog, and I get weekly an email from Dan Ryland. And he spoke on this point of creativity. And he was saying that at the end of this, 2 good things about all of this creativity that he sees will happen is some of this will stick as a new way of doing things, even after we go back to our church buildings and worship together again. And then secondly, we may not use everything, but we will remember we can do more than we think we can, and we can do better than we have ever imagined when the heat is on. And so it makes us realize that we can do wonderful things in a crisis when we have to.
That's amazing. Well, I'm hoping and praying that everybody's confidence level is at an all-time high, and he's exactly right. We're going to look back on this and realize that it caused us to do some things that we didn't even think were possible.
And join us next time as we continue our 3-Point podcast on how to discover creativity, as we will take a look at how that creativity can come through collaboration. And thank you for listening to the 3-Point podcast with Nate and Moorhead.